Drive safe. Please mind the speed limit. Turn left.
Alright, good evening everyone. It's John Tapp with the Freightliner Argosy. So glad you guys enjoyed your day off. For those of you work every Monday. So we're going to start with Montana, since I got the double reefer trailer, the Turnpike one. So I gotta be careful. So so anyway, let's
Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. Finally, we are here.
alright. Sydney will be the long ride. So this is gonna be for strawberries. So
This programming is sponsored by the 2025-2026 In-Print Brown Reading Series, presenting Booker Prize winner George Saunders, reading from his new novel, Vigil, Wednesday, February 25th, or at inprint.org.
Seems that we do not give enough credibility to the danger of flooding. It's sort of like, oh, well, it floods, that's the way Houston is, so what? But we're going to need more and more room for water in our community. And building in floodplains, and particularly deep in the floodplains, really makes no sense at all to me.
You can find the map on the Harris County Flood Control District's website. We could see some patchy fog tonight. It'll be cloudy. Night low should be around 56 degrees. Tomorrow, partly sunny and breezy, high near 77. I'm Gail DeLauder, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Jarl and Pamela Moe, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Go straight on.
And the Public Welfare Foundation, committed to advancing transformative youth and criminal justice reforms.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Scott Detrow. Former President Barack Obama commented over the weekend about a racist post that the White House took down from one of President Trump's social media accounts. The post included an image of Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes. The former president said many Americans, quote, find this behavior deeply troubling, but it fits into a larger and ongoing pattern of extremist rhetoric and imagery coming from the Trump administration. NPR's domestic extremism correspondent Odette Youssef joins us now to discuss. Hey, Odette.
Hey, Scott.
So, look, this is not the first time the president has said or posted something that is really outside the bounds of acceptable public discourse. Put all of this into context for us.
Yeah, I spoke with Eric Ward about this. He heads the civil rights organization Race Forward, and here's how he framed it.
If this were just one racist image or one bad post, it wouldn't matter much. What matters is that over the last year, the Trump administration has increasingly learned to speak in the emotional language of white nationalism. And once a government starts talking that way, it quietly changes who the country is for.
And Scott, Ward and others have seen this not just out of the White House, but also the Department of Homeland Security, State Department, and Department of Labor, where language, visual style, and some of the musical choices are reflective of what historically was contained within fringe extremist movements. Now, Trump has said he did not see that part of the post that depicted the Obamas. He said an aide was responsible for it. But the racism of that post was not necessarily surprising to people who've been tracking extremist themes in public messaging from this administration. Scott, what was notable to them was its overtness, in contrast with the dog whistles or insider references of other messaging that, only people familiar with the white nationalist movement would readily recognize.
Can you give us a few examples of some of those dog whistles?
There have been so many examples. One of the most notable was a social media post from DHS to recruit ICE agents. And the post said, "Which way, American man?" This was largely taken as a reworking of the title of a racist, anti-Semitic book called Which Way, Western Man. That book is part of the neo-Nazi white nationalist canon. Another example, and we've discussed on this show before, Scott, the concept of remigration that DHS and the State Department have publicly endorsed. That concept was largely popularized by far-right ultranationalists in Europe. NPR asked DHS about the pattern of public messaging that resembles white nationalist propaganda, and a spokesperson wrote back, quote, "By NPR's standards, every American who posts patriotic imagery on the 4th of July should be canceled and labeled a Nazi. Not everything you dislike is Nazi propaganda," end quote.
What is the point of this kind of messaging, though? I mean, I think it's fair to say that most Americans are not supportive of white nationalism or extremism.
That's absolutely right. I mean, white nationalists comprise a very small proportion of the American public. People I've been speaking to think this is really about training the public's reflexes to associate certain ideas with each other. For example, associating immigrants with crime, associating America with whiteness. But, Scott, for me, it's troubling that covering domestic extremism is now not just about tracking fringe groups, but tracking federal government messaging. One person who explains how all of this fits together is J.M. Berger. He's a scholar at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. And he defines extremism not simply as movements that are out there. He says extremism actually is the belief that your community can only be successful or secure if it's engaged in harmful action against another community. And that belief can be promoted by a government itself. Berger calls this lawful extremism, where the apparatus of the state is used to enforce those systems of supremacy and harm. And Scott, I think it's a term we might think about as we look at how this administration has embraced language premising the safety and success of some Americans on the removal of certain immigrants.
Lawful extremism. Interesting. NPR's Odette Youssef, thank you so much for your reporting.
Thank you.
Palestinian territory of the West Bank is already walled off on its west side from Israel. The separation barrier is more than 400 miles long, as high as 25 feet in parts. Now, Israel's military says they are going to build a new stretch of border wall on the east side of the territory. NPR's Emily Fang went to see where the new wall will go up and found this story.
Palestinian farmer Mohammed Sawafda looks at his wasted fields.
See it, it's dried. It's because it's over mature.
He's pointing to the husks of faded red peppers that he wasn't able to harvest this year, so they rotted on the vine. We're moving fast because we're passing an outpost built by hardline Jewish settlers.
They forbidden me to reaching the area in last June.
Most days, the settlers watch it from just a few hundred meters away.
They start to attacking us, to putting their hands on more and more and more area.
And they threaten his workers when they try to plant or harvest, making it nearly impossible to come to his own fields. And so an entire year of crops went bad.
Nearly about 30 years I am establishing this farm. I am losing it in one moment, just in one moment. Despite I have the ownership document of this lands.
Israel's own military says incidents of severe settler violence, including shooting, arson, and other crimes, rose 50% in the last year. Illegal settlements have been proliferating for decades, but they have accelerated recently with the express purpose of driving out Palestinians.
So we are in the middle here.
Sawafda is pointing to a concrete separation wall in the distance. Israel started building it more than 20 years ago, much of it inside what's called the Green Line, an armistice line from the 1967 war. The line is within sight of Sawafda's farm.
Now all of it inside the wall and outside the wall the same thing.
The wall is mostly built on Palestinian land. It cuts off the entire west side of the West Bank from Israel. And according to new Israeli military plans, another line of blockades and checkpoints is now being built on the West Bank's east side, along the fertile Jordan Valley, where I drive through, part of something called the Great Rift.
It goes all the way from Syria to Victoria Lake, I think, in Africa.
This is Eli Avador. He's part of a group called the Jordan Valley Activists, tracking and trying to stop the spread of illegal settler outposts, and tracking the construction of what activists fear is a new separation wall. Israeli military documents describe the planned 22-kilometer-long barrier as a way to stop a surge in drugs and arms smuggling from neighboring Jordan. But Israel's already built a fence along its border with Jordan, so Avador does not buy this reason.
Now they are building way in and very close to the Palestinian villages, the new fence.
Israel has already served eviction notices to some Palestinian families along the barrier's planned route. So activists like Avador know it's going to slice a Palestinian village in half and encircle another one completely called Hirba Yarza. And that's where we head next. 13 Palestinian families live here in Hirba Yarza, shepherding sheep as their families have for generations here. And they tell NPR when we arrive that the planned border wall will trap them. This man says the planned wall will cut them off from all municipal services from the nearby town. His young children would have to cross a new checkpoint just to go to their school or to the doctor. He and the other shepherds in the story did not want to give their names because they fear retribution from the Israeli military and Jewish settlers who live nearby. What do you see here? It's a trap, another man says. We will be trapped inside the wall, he says, cutting him off from pasture lands for his sheep. But right now he has bigger problems. Every day, he says, the settlers come and harass us. Suddenly, he cuts our interview short.
Settlers are coming.
Because there are two settlers driving up to the village and they are angry that we're there.
They cover their hands. They cover their
He's covered his face. Settler is now kicking and punching the people that I'm with. The Palestinian shepherds later show me pictures they took of the same settlers shouting from just days earlier. They say this particular settler comes often on his horse to intimidate them. Eventually, the settlers calm down, but Avador, with the Jordan Valley activists, worries we are trapped now.
Only question is how many will go back.
But eventually, we do find a route to drive out on, and we leave the Palestinian family behind and face the night and whatever comes in the next days on their own. Emily Fang, NPR News, Hirba Yarza, the West Bank.
At 6:18 on a Monday evening, you're listening to All Things Considered on News 88.7. 68 Fahrenheit, 20 Celsius right now here at the UH campus. I'm Dave Putman. Out on the roads, looks like we've got a problem on the eastbound side, or rather westbound side of I-10 in downtown, right before 45, the North Freeway. A problem involving a Metro bus taking up the left shoulder.
Did you know your gift to Houston Public Media could go twice or even 3 times as far through your employer's matching gift program? Many companies will match the charitable donations of their employees, and some even match gifts from retirees. That means your support for trusted news and programs could have double the impact for our community. Find out if your company participates at houstonpublicmedia.org/match.
I'm Stephen Dubner. On the next Freakonomics Radio, 60% of the jobs that Americans do today did not exist in 1940. We're constantly thinking of new things to desire, new services to offer, new goods and products. So what do people today actually do all day?
It's kind of nerve-wracking, I will be honest.
That's next time on Freakonomics Radio.
And it's noon time, 10 o'clock tonight, followed by Think at 11.
Caution.
Support comes from the Clarion at Brazosport College, featuring the vocal ensemble Kit Kat on February 27th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets and more information at brazosport.edu/Clarion.
Support also comes from members like you from CertaPro Painters, offering residential and commercial painting services from color consultations to full project management. Estimates and more at CertaPro.com. From Metro, introducing the Right Metro Fare Card. Right Metro Fare System replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for the bus and rail. Details at rightmetro.org/fare system. And from Good Reason Houston, bringing together educators, families, and community leaders to strengthen public education in Houston. Learn more at goodreasonhouston.org. It'll be cloudy with a bit of fog overnight, low around 56. Sunny and warm tomorrow with high near 76. More of the same on Wednesday with high near 80. More of the same on Thursday, and then maybe some scattered showers on Friday. And a high of 81. Again, right now at 67 and 620.
Support for NPR comes from this station. And from Easy Cater, a workplace food platform dedicated to making it easy for organizations to order food from a wide variety of restaurants, set up employee meal programs, and manage food spend. At investing and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the sustaining members of this NPR station.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Scott Detrow. Over the past year, we have been talking to political scientists about the state of American democracy. Earlier this month, NPR's Frank Langford checked in with more than a half dozen of them. Most said the country is further along the path to some form of autocracy, or that that's already arrived. And they point to specific actions by the Trump administration.
Scholars say two strikingly autocratic moments came in September. First, the Trump administration threatened ABC following Jimmy Kimmel's comments on the killing of Charlie Kirk. Here's Federal Communications Commission Chair Brendan Carr.
Frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Then, a week later, President Trump proposed that American generals use U.S. cities as training grounds for their troops.
We're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms.
That's the kind of language that was used by South American dictatorships in the 1970s. That's Pinochet stuff.
That's Harvard Professor Steve Levitsky. He's referring to Augusto Pinochet, the late Chilean dictator. Levitsky says the U.S. has already seen state-sanctioned violence, including the killings of 2 U.S. citizens in Minneapolis.
Masked, unmarked agents on the streets of the United States, pushing people around, making arrests, sometimes without due process, and bullying and intimidating U.S. citizens is utterly new in the modern era and something that simply does not happen in modern democratic regimes.
Levitsky says that as Trump exacts a price for political opposition, he's changing how America's governed.
I would argue that the United States in 2025-26 has slid into a mild form of competitive authoritarianism.
Under competitive authoritarianism, there's still elections. The ruling party uses various tactics, attacking the press, disenfranchising voters, threatening critics, to tilt the electoral playing field in its favor.
I think it's reversible, but this is authoritarianism.
Some of Levitsky's colleagues say the U.S. system is battered, but still democratic. Kurt Weiland teaches at the University of Texas at Austin.
I'm significantly more confident now than I was in April.
Really?
Totally.
Weiland says Trump went mostly unchecked for months.
Until about August, September, Trump was like a steamroller who pushed forward and pushed ahead, and there was very little containment and opposition.
Weiland says now more people are standing their ground.
Jimmy Kimmel is still on there and makes terrible fun of the guy, and nothing happened.
And then there's redistricting.
My biggest concern last summer was this gerrymandering drive. If the guy had succeeded in seriously skewing the elections in the House, it would have gone to the core of democracy. But he didn't. You know, he got barely anything.
Some other scholars say Trump is trying to enact bold policies. Jonathan Turley is a professor at George Washington University Law School. For instance, he says Trump is pressuring news organizations and universities to address problems with liberal bias.
There are legitimate objections that have been raised by the Trump administration. That does not justify some of the means. But there is a long-standing need for a debate within these institutions.
The next big test for American democracy could be the November midterms. The Trump administration is suing states to hand over voter data. That worries Princeton's Kim Shevely. She studied the authoritarian tactics of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban.
You know, one of the tricks that Viktor Orban used to disenfranchise Hungarian voters abroad, in the UK, for example, were told, go to this one place to vote. And then on election day, they switched to a different location but didn't tell anyone.
Earlier this month, Trump ally Steve Bannon floated this idea.
We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. We're not going to sit here and allow you to steal the country again.
Bannon was referring to the lie that Trump won the 2020 election. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said she'd never heard the president discuss such a plan. The federal law prohibits it. But Dartmouth's Brendan Nyan is concerned.
Many people are worried that Trump will deploy ICE and CBP in a way that affects voter turnout, potentially trying to intimidate people of color, naturalized citizens, etc., from participating in the midterm election.
If that happens, Nyan hopes it sparks even more people to vote.
But even contemplating that kind of interference is, I think, a really substantial threat.
Because, as Nyan puts it, when it comes to elections, there are no do-overs. Frank Langford, NPR News.
Jazz great Louis Armstrong spent much of his childhood in New Orleans with the Karnofsky family, Lithuanian Jews who helped him get his first musical instrument. Now architects are rebuilding the 100-year-old tailor shop, cementing its role in New Orleans jazz history. Alana Schreiber with member station WWNO paid a visit.
There's an old building at the edge of the French Quarter with sand floors, a wooden staircase, and light trickling in. It's under renovation. But 100 years ago, it was the Karnofsky tailor shop and home.
So they're Jewish Lithuanian family. I think by the time they were involved with this building, they were maybe a second generation New Orleans family.
That's Jason Richards, an architect working to redesign the space. But he says this isn't any old building.
And obviously the reason for the historic significance of the building is its connection to the birth of jazz and Louis Armstrong in particular.
Yes, the Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong got to know the Karnofsky family in particular because they took him in, and he actually shared meals and dinners with the Karnofsky family. And the legend is that he bought his first cornet from the family.
That $5 cornet was thanks to an advance from the Karnofskys on Armstrong's paycheck. While Armstrong never worked in the tailor shop, he would hop in the family's horse-drawn wagon to collect junk to sell. And he helped care for the younger Karnofsky kids at night.
One of his main influences was that actually in the evening they would sing lullabies, essentially Yiddish lullabies in the evening.
That's Jenny West, another architect. And Yiddish lullabies actually stayed with Louis Armstrong. He once wrote that the family would sing the song Russian Lullaby as a nightly ritual to put the baby to sleep. Years later, he recorded his own version of the song.
That was a huge part of what influenced him to start singing and kind of push his understanding in different musical instruments, essentially.
And all that history, well, it's in the fairy bricks that make up the old tailor shop.
A lot of what we did in terms of our research was the architectural fabric of the building, bricks.
In 2021, the building was destroyed in Hurricane Ida. Bricks scattered everywhere. But architects picked them up and reused them in the renovation.
It has a huge potential to be a cultural hub for New Orleans and have a lot of cultural programming there related to jazz music, to the history of both the Jewish community and the black community, since they were both there in the same space.
While the construction still has a ways to go, both West and Richards agree that the building needs a mezuzah, a small scroll put on door frames of spaces with a Jewish presence. And maybe this mezuzah should have a trumpet on it. For NPR News, I'm Alana Schreiber in New Orleans.
And in Houston, which I've heard some describe as New Orleans after it sobered up, bought a suit, and got a job. You've been listening to All Things Considered on your NPR station, News 87. We're a minute away from Marketplace, but first back out on the roads, we still have the problem near downtown, eastbound direction of I-10, right before I-45, a wreck in the left lane.
We're seeing this big growth in demand, primarily because of data centers. So now the tech companies are scouring the country for places to build. And now we have communities all over the place trying to figure out, is this what they want? If so, what do they want to get out of it?
I'm Natalie Kitroeff. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
It's coming your way next at 7 o'clock, followed by Today Explained at 7:30.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from St. Arnold Brewing Company, a place for corporate events on tap, meeting rooms, AV equipment, and full catering available. More at starnold.com.
Support also comes from members like you and from Central Market with flown-in fresh seafood plus sashimi and sushi enrolled daily in every store for grab-and-go meals. More information at centralmarket.com. Mid-6:30.
Marketplace is supported by JLL, a global commercial real estate firm that helps clients find, manage, and invest in properties across all sectors. JLL, see a brighter way.
Holiday week or not, the economy doesn't stop, and neither does the flow of economic data. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Revenued, providing working capital for businesses whose cash flow is holding them back. Revenued approves businesses based on revenue, not credit, with funds approved and available in a day. More at getrevenuedwithad.com. And by GEP, at the forefront of agentic procurement orchestration and autonomous supply chains. With GEP Smart Software, GEP Key Agentic AI, and Strategy Consulting, GEP works to help business optimize value and reduce risk. And by Bitwarden, designed to simplify password management and secure accounts. Bitwarden provides a solution to enable digital protection from any location and across all devices. Learn more at bitwarden.com.
In New York, I'm Kristen Schwab in for Kai Risdall. It's Monday, February 16th. Good to be here with you. It's just one of those weeks that can only be described as a data dump. We're going to get the latest GDP figures on Friday and a bunch of numbers about housing, consumer spending, and inflation along the way. Let's take it one day at a time, though. Tomorrow comes manufacturing data from the Federal Reserve and some of its regional banks. Early indications suggest manufacturing activity has been picking up so far in 2026. Marketplace's Justin Ho looks into whether that could continue and whether that could translate into more manufacturing employment.
Last year wasn't exactly a stable one for the manufacturing sector, thanks to tariffs, high interest rates, and a shaky global economy. But this year, manufacturers have a few things working for them, says Scott Palm, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing.
The tax environment is favorable. If interest rates at least stabilize, there'll be some relief for consumers and for businesses.
Paul says lower interest rates might spur more demand for appliances, vehicles, and other manufactured goods. Plus, the big wave of AI investment will push up demand for the equipment that goes into data centers.
So I think there's a lot of potential areas for growth that could aid in the demand for manufacturing as well.
Manufacturers surveyed by the Institute for Supply Management last month said new orders picked up for the first time since August. But the same report found that employment shrank at the same time.
Even if new orders come back, it's going to be a bit before folks start being comfortable making permanent decisions like hiring people.
Susan Spence is chair of ISM's Manufacturing Business Survey Committee. She says the big factor causing manufacturers to hold off is tariff uncertainty.
That's kind of frozen action on folks to say we don't know where the next one's coming from. And even if something gets struck down, if the administration turns around and levies it in a different way, we're in this for a while.
Spence says manufacturers have also just been through a year of slow demand, so they have plenty of capacity to make goods without hiring new staff.
They can, put additional shifts on or pay overtime. And I imagine that's what they're going to do until they see that the order book is a little more solid.
That's why Spence says manufacturing employment tends to lag behind manufacturing activity. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
The latest in the will he or won't he tariff situation is that a rollback on aluminum and steel taxes might be on the horizon. The decision could affect everything from ovens to beer cans. White House officials say no verdict has been made yet. And yes, I know it's kind of impossible to keep track of every bit of tariff news coming out of this administration. But we're paying special attention to this one because a change to aluminum and steel tariffs could affect more goods than any import tax rollback yet. Marketplace's Kaylee Wells explains why.
Sure, these metals are in cars and cabinet hinges and pie tins, but it's also used in just about everything, says Philip Luck at the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
Everything you consume either has some steel aluminum or steel aluminum was used to move it, power it, or make it.
Even, say, paper needs a metal blade to cut down the tree and a metal-laden truck and forklift to ship and move the logs.
A supply chain just has these heavy elements, these heavy products in them throughout.
The question is, how much would that rollback impact most of us?
The larger consumer pain points aren't going to be fundamentally shaken by what happens on these metal tariffs.
Economist and UCLA law professor Kimberly Clausing says consumers are struggling with the cost of healthcare and housing and groceries. Steel and aluminum just don't account for that big a chunk of those costs.
When you look at the groceries, some of them do have metal, their cans and their pie tins and their things like that that are affecting people. You know, realistically, if they got rid of all of the metal tariffs tomorrow, we're only talking a very small impact at the grocery store.
The Department of Commerce didn't respond to a request for comment, but Art Wheaton, Director of Labor Studies at Cornell University, says now that this possible tariff is in the news, there's a pretty good chance President Trump will make it happen.
Because if he doesn't, now it's, I was hoping to get this gift or this discount, or you're going to help us on prices, and now you're not doing it. What's happening?
A rollback might not change the biggest bills, but Wheaton says if you're hoping to pay less for a new washing machine or a Ford F-150, it'd still be a welcome change. I'm Kaylee Wells for Marketplace.
Wall Street today was closed for the President's Day holiday, but since the stock market is not the economy, we'll have some other highlights for you when we do the numbers. Ozempic, according to a recent poll by the health policy organization AFF. And it would only make sense that a big shift in how people eat and how much they eat would worry restaurants. But it turns out households with at least one person on a GLP-1 actually spend more on eating out. Dina Shanker wrote about this in Bloomberg. Dina, welcome to the program.
Thanks. I'm a big fan, so psyched to be here.
So the title of your story is Ozempic users actually spend more dining out. And to me, that logic doesn't really just follow, so make it make sense for us.
So number one is it's GLP-1 users households that we're tracking. And what do GLP-1 users talk about when they say the impact on them? It's not just that they eat less, it's that they think about food less. The food noise drops out. Right. So if you're the person in charge of feeding a household, you are usually the one, you're going grocery shopping, you're meal planning, even like on a random time during the week, there's probably some list in your head at some point of the foods you need to buy, and the foods you need to prepare, and the meals coming up, and what needs to happen for them. But you go on a GLP-1, and all of that disappears. So what happens? It's 6 o'clock, it's dinner time, your family is hungry and expecting to eat, and you haven't thought about it. So what happens? You guys go out to a meal. And so just that alone, you can see pushing a lot of GLP-1 users as well as their families into restaurants more. So that's one explanation. The other is that restaurants are becoming increasingly user-friendly, I'd say. Menus are becoming like a design your own. Choose your own sides, choose your own protein, choose your own base, etc. For a GLP-1 user, that is kind of perfect. And then there's a lot of ways that restaurants are leaning into this, which is likely, I think, to drive more of this traffic into their restaurants.
Yeah, well, tell me about some of the other creative menu solutions you've seen. I mean, these are not necessarily just for GLP-1 users, right? I mean, there's the protein craze, the snack craze, I don't know, maybe cheaper meals because of inflation.
Yeah, that's right. We're seeing like a confluence of trends in the food space. As you mentioned, there's high protein. You know, we're in an economy where people are really trying to save their money. So there's people looking for smaller options just for the affordability aspect. Snacking is growing. So a lot of people want to just get like more snackable options at a restaurant. So we're seeing a whole bunch of things that cater to these trends. So for example, Del Taco, they offered a micro meal. It was a limited time offer where they did a mini burrito, a handful of fries, and one single donut bite. So the idea behind it was driven by value or low price more than it was driven by GLP-1 users. And then you have very specific GLP-1 menus like Cuba Libre, which is a 4-location restaurant group in the Northeast that created a very specific GLP-1 menu using items that they were already using in their kitchen. So they weren't starting something from scratch and offering something that would require a whole new, prep line for the cooks. They just made things a bit different, but for GLP-1 users, that can make a huge difference.
Do you think restaurants have a choice with how popular these weight loss drugs are becoming and just how much their user base has grown?
It's a really interesting way to ask that question because a lot of restaurants are dealing with customers on budgets who are being choosier and choosier about where they're going and where they're spending their money. Now, you have a group here that is growing, that has specific needs, that seems to be spending more money at restaurants according to multiple data sources. So why wouldn't you cater to them? And also, it's not just GLP-1 users. I mean, so many people want smaller meals for a variety of reasons. I'll just say, like, yesterday I really wasn't that hungry for lunch, but I knew I wanted something. And I was just wishing that I could go to one of my salad places and get a mini salad. I don't want the whole thing. I just want a mini one.
Yeah.
But such a salad did not exist in my vicinity anyway. And so, you know what I did? I bought that full-size salad. I ate the whole thing, and then I felt terrible.
Dina Shanker is a food reporter at Bloomberg. Dina, thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you so much.
Right now, we are stuck squarely between two Fed meetings. The last interest rate decision we got was at the end of January when the Fed held rates after a run of cuts. And the next decision we'll get is in mid-March. In the meantime, the Fed is taking in lots of data during this data-filled week and in the weeks to come. In other words, the Fed, it's keeping busy. Marketplace's Sarah Leeson looks at what that means.
When we talk about how the Federal Reserve works, we sometimes talk about it in terms of a toolkit, as in a rate change is the tool that the Federal Open Market Committee is using to guide monetary policy. But there's no actual tool per se. Instead, there's a lot of work being done by Fed employees.
Basically, what the Federal Reserve does is instruct the desk, the New York Fed, to carry out the policy as stated.
Tim Dewey is chief U.S. economist for SGH Macro Advisors, and he's going to help us explain the open market portion of that Federal Open Market Committee.
The New York Fed is the agent for the Federal Reserve that buys and sells or purchases and sells Treasury securities in order to follow the objectives of the FOMC as far as interest rate policy.
The FOMC decides rates, open market operations make them happen, traditionally by buying and selling government securities to change the money supply and influence interest rates. And it's all happening in the open market, where banks and dealers can get in on the action.
I mean, you also might want to talk to somebody who's really nitty-gritty into the details, right?
True. So I did.
My name is Julie Ramate. I'm the deputy manager of the System Open Market Account.
In other words, she works at the desk in charge of open market operations at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York.
So let's say this is a day when the policy rate has been changed.
While the rest of us are still waiting to hear from Chair Jerome Powell at the FOMC press conference, that open market desk at the New York Fed is receiving marching orders.
At that meeting, the committee would, at the same time, issue an implementation note that would outline various changes that are relevant for the trading desk in New York to support monetary policy implementation.
That implementation note is like a set of open market operations instructions. For example, in December, after the Fed cut rates by a quarter point, that implementation note included action items such as, and I quote, increase the system open market account holdings of securities through purchases of treasury bills and, if needed, other treasury securities with remaining maturities of 3 years or less to maintain an ample level of reserves. Such a mouthful, but it really just boils down to the FOMC saying to the open market desk, New York Fed, go buy some treasury bills and help us lower rates. And that task is not limited to Fed Day.
We are staffed throughout the trading day through the U.S. session, and then, as needed, if we'd anticipate an event or responding to events in the markets, we might be fully staffed 24 hours.
Analysts at the New York Fed are doing more than just trading and managing assets, too.
We're trying to sort of understand and get a pulse on what's happening in markets and think about the variety that are important to policymakers.
That market insight gets added to the mix of price data, employment reports, and all kinds of other numbers that the FOMC looks at when deciding how to guide monetary policy next time they pull out their toolkit. I'm Sarah Leeson for Marketplace.
Go straight on.
Coming up,
empty envelopes, empty cassette tapes, like big boxes of air.
There's something poetic to be said here about how nothing can actually be something. First, though, let's do the numbers. U.S. markets were closed for the President's Day holiday. The U.S. officially recognizes 11 federal holidays. The countries that have the most, according to the Pew Research Center, are Myanmar with 30 and Bangladesh with 29. The country with the fewest, Switzerland, has one federal holiday, Swiss National Day on August 1st. Tomorrow is Mardi Gras, or Fat Tuesday in New Orleans. According to the Visitors Bureau, 90% of the rooms in the downtown French Quarter were reserved as of the end of last week. A Tulane University study estimates the economic impact of Mardi Gras on the city at $891 million. Fun fact, that's 3% of New Orleans' GDP. You're listening to Marketplace.
The Numbers is supported by Mercury, a fintech that offers banking, credit cards, and financial software. Marketplace is supported by Progressive. Progressive Insurance is hiring for virtual and hybrid employment. The company offers opportunities for professional development and career progression. Position details can be found online at careers.progressive.com. And by Baird, employee-owned and independent, Baird offers global financial advice focused solely on clients' needs, while consistently reinvesting in the expertise and capabilities to serve those needs. More information at BairdDifference.com. And by Solidigm, offering solid-state storage solutions optimized for AI with higher capacities, greater speed, and energy efficiency. Solidigm, AI data infrastructure built on a solid foundation. Learn more at storageforai.com.
648, you're listening to News 88.
Support comes from Carl Ingram CPAs and Advisors, a top 25 nationally ranked full-service accounting and advisory firm offering tax, audit, accounting, consulting, and advisory services. Learn more at cricpa.com.
Support also comes from members like you from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, workers' comp provider, committed to handling claims to help injured workers get back to work. More at texasmutual.com/mutual care. From the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. stluke'shealth.org/cancer. And from San Jacinto College Foundation, presenting Couture for a Cause, an evening celebrating fashion and philanthropy to benefit the Promise at San Jack Scholarship. It's Friday, April 24th, 6 p.m. Details at sanjack.edu/gala. Mid 649.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kristen Schwab. The Campbell's Company, the food giant that manufactures everything from Swanson chicken broth to goldfish crackers to V8 juice, it announced in January that it would be closing its Cape Cod chip factory in Hyannis, Massachusetts. The company acquired the chip brand in 2018, and the factory, it's been a big part of the community on the Cape. WBUR's Solon Kelleher looks at the end of Cape Cod chips being manufactured in Cape Cod.
Few people have known the Cape Cod Chip Factory on Cape Cod better than the founder's daughter, Nicole Bernard Dawes. Now, she's a thriving food and beverage entrepreneur in her own right. But in the early 1980s, she was a kid on Cape Cod, the mom who owned a health food store, and a father who was building what would become one of New England's most well-known brands.
Growing up, I spent a lot of time at the factory. Like after school, I would very frequently go to the factory and do my homework there, or occasionally would help out sorting the chips. I mean, I just was there all the time.
Dawes returned to the factory as an adult. She served as director of marketing and played a big role at the company. Have you ever seen the reduced fat Cape Cod chips on the shelf? That was her idea. Maybe she accompanied you on one of the factory's walkthrough tours. Here she is on a 1998 episode of the PBS show Arthur, in which she led a group of school children through the chip-making process.
This is where all of our chips are made. This truck right here is carrying 50,000 pounds of potatoes right now.
We did crazy PR things. When Seinfeld was going off the air, we came up with this idea that if someone sent us nothing, because it was like the show about nothing, that we would send them a free bag of chips. We got so many things, thousands and thousands and thousands of nothing. It was like, empty envelopes, empty cassette tapes, like big boxes of air.
Her father sold Cape Cod chips to snack company Lance in 1999. Dawes moved on to found successful organic snack brand Late July, and more recently the sparkling beverage brand Nixie. Although it's been years since she worked for Cape Cod Chips, the recent news of Campbell's decision to close the factory still feels like a loss.
My heart breaks for the people who lost their jobs because, this is a tough time to lose a job. It's a tough time to get a job. And American food factory jobs are incredible jobs.
Dawes cites the ability of workers to move up within a factory as one of the reasons that closures like this are a loss to the community. Campbell says 49 jobs will be affected when the factory shuts down in April. The company said it's moving operations to more modern, efficient facilities in Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. The news is also a personal loss for Dawes, who still calls Cape Cod home.
I will admit it hit me pretty hard. My father passed away a number of years ago, and there was just something about, every time I would drive by that plant and smell the potato chips cooking, it just felt like a little piece of home. And when I found out that it was closing, it did feel a little bit like losing like that kind of last piece of my dad.
Dawes won't see the factory where she grew up continue on. But she says every time she smells a freshly fried slice of potato,
I am immediately transported back to that factory floor and like being with my parents and being a kid. And, that was my childhood.
And Cape Cod chips will still be available in supermarkets across the country. They just won't be made on Cape Cod. In Boston, I'm Solon Kelleher for Marketplace.
As I said at the top of the show, it's an across-the-board, data-driven week. But there are a lot of numbers coming out specifically about housing. Home builder confidence, housing starts, new home sales. Regardless of what the data reveal, new house, old house, people in all kinds of houses often have home improvement on their to-do lists. But, and I speak from experience here, DIY projects can be tricky, which brings us to the next installment of our series, My Economy.
I'm Mia Sharella.
And I'm Mariel Alper.
And we are based in Hyattsville, Maryland. And we teach DIY home improvement classes.
And our business name is M&M Properties. In November 2022, one of my friends had just bought a house, and within about a month, his basement flooded, and it was completely ruined. His insurance was not going to cover most of it. And Mia heard about this, and she's like, oh, let's just go fix it all. And I have owned a house for several years, but I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. And so I thought, well, this could be a great opportunity to learn how to do things, and I don't mind if I mess up because we're helping my friend out, sure. So we completely renovated the basement, and I said at the end of it, wow, this would be a great experience for other people. They should be able to learn from you too. And Mia kept saying, no one wants to take a class on this stuff. Nobody wants to do this. And I eventually convinced her, let's try it once and let's just see how it goes.
I finally caved, and I think June of 2023 was our first class that we did. And I believe it was a drywall class.
It was.
It was our first one.
It was exhausting.
It was so tiring. I'm like, we were so tired.
The class was way too long. It was all day, and the drywall we practiced on were basically walls that Mia built. They were huge, they were heavy. It took us forever to set up, forever to clean up, and it was tiring. But the class itself was so much fun. People were so excited to learn. They had a great time. They enjoyed talking with each other. They were inspired by all the things they were going to do. So it kept me motivated to want to do it again.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that after the very first class, we kind of figured out based on the feedback that we received from so many of the women at that class, there's not a lot like it. And there's not a lot where women can learn how to do some of these skills and how to maintain their own homes without always having to call somebody to make repairs.
We have done a lot of classes. We've been doing about one a month, which is a good frequency for us since we both have other jobs. Our most popular classes are power tools. People love to be able to try out power tools that they might have been a little bit intimidated by before. Also drywall repair, because everyone has at least one hole in their wall somewhere, or they will soon. And then tiling as well. Everyone wants a nice backsplash, and tiling is pretty straightforward. And so we've had a couple clients that have taken our class and then have actually done some tiling in their house.
I've been teaching, I've been a public school teacher for 19 years. This is my 19th year teaching. And I've been doing contracting, professionally on the side since 2016. I will tell you, at like the 30-year mark, I would love to retire and teach classes. Why not? It's a lot of fun. And I think that it would be neat to do that. Just continue meeting interesting people, teaching classes in retirement.
I work in tech, and so the classes are kind of a nice break from that, where I actually get to interact with people, help people, do something hands-on. Honestly, my favorite part about the class is just the environment of it. People are talking to each other and interacting and making friends and sharing stories, and it's great.
That was Mia Shirella and Marielle Alper in Hyattsville, Maryland. If you're in the business of fixing or teaching, or really in the business of almost anything, we want to hear about it. Tell us your story at marketplace.org/myeconomy.
Marketplace is supported by Odoo.com, offering integrated programs for sales, customer relationship management, inventory, and other business operations, designed to work together as a customizable software suite. Odoo, all your business on one platform. And by UKG. Their HR, pay, and workforce management tools are designed to help business leaders build trust and empower their people. UKG, because when work works, everything works. More at ukg.com/work.
This final note on the way out today, saw this on CNBC. The Olympics doesn't pay athletes anything. With lots of hard work and a little luck, they collect glory and hopefully a medal. But some countries do offer their own prizes. Who makes the most? Medalists from Singapore and Hong Kong come out as the #1 and 2 highest paid athletes, with gold earning them more than $750,000. Then there's a steep drop-off at #3, Malaysia, paying around $250,000. The United States falls at #16 on the list, with gold medalists gifted just under $40,000. It's not all about the cash prizes, though. Some countries give athletes jewelry, paintings, and cars. Amir Babawi, Caitlin Esch, John Gordon, Noya Carr, and Stephanie Seek are the Marketplace editing staff. Kelly Silvera is the news director, and I'm Kristen Schwab. See you here tomorrow. This is APM.
We're a minute away from 7 o'clock on a new moon on Monday evening. You're on your NPR station, News 88.7. Say that a whole lot, and if you're of a certain age, you know exactly what I'm talking about. One last look at the drive home finds that we still have a wreck on the westbound side of I-10 at I-45 and a stall in your way on the North Loop, 610 westbound direction after the morning.
On the next Houston Matters, early voting begins for the March primary. We'll have a preview. Also, local restaurant owners on the challenges their industry's facing. Plus, social media, kids, and addiction. And Houston Grand Opera celebrates black singers. Join us.
That's tomorrow morning at 9 with an encore tomorrow night at 9 on News 88.7. Between now and sunrise at 7 o'clock, it'll be mostly cloudy with a low around 56, bit of morning fog as well, and mostly sunny in the afternoon with high near 76. Right now it's 62 degrees here at your NPR station, KUHF Houston News 88.7. The service of the University of Houston, 7 o'clock.
Increasingly, you hear the tech companies talk about data centers more as AI factories. Everyone likes a factory in that it produces something useful in the economy. And so they're trying to elevate this industrial building, basically, and say it contributes to this future.
I'm Natalie Kitroeff. That's coming up on The Daily from the New York Times.
The Daily is supported by Progressive Insurance, now offering virtual and hybrid employment opportunities. Details at careers.progressive.com.
Go deeper into the most important stories of the day with The Daily, an audio series from the New York Times. Distribution of The Daily is made possible by American Public Media. APM produces and distributes programs that entertain and engage audiences everywhere.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Ryland Barton. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham is calling for the U.S. military strikes on Iran within weeks if diplomacy with Iran fails. Graham also alluded to assassinating Iran's supreme leader. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv.
Graham spoke to reporters after meeting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Graham said if U.S. talks with Iran fail, he thinks the U.S. should strike Iran to topple the regime. NPR asked Graham how it was possible to bring about regime change.
Every day that goes by in the war, they get less capable. We get more because we have such a dominant advantage.
Graham said a decision on a strike would need to come within weeks. Graham compared Iran's supreme leader to Hitler and alluded to killing him.
Somebody probably asked in 1935, what would Germany look like if you killed Hitler? I wish somebody had tried successfully.
He's thinking about killing the Ayatollah.
The Ayatollah represents evil incarnate to me.
Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The NAACP and allied groups are asking a judge to limit how the federal government uses voter data seized in an FBI raid on the Fulton County Elections Hub near Atlanta. Member station WAVE Christopher Alston has more.
The groups are asking the judge to bar any use beyond the stated criminal investigation, including using the data for election administration or immigration enforcement. They also want an inventory of what agents took during the January 28th seizure and the identities of those who accessed it. The motion notes that the records were taken as the Justice Department has been suing some states to obtain unredacted voter information. The FBI's warrant sought 2020 election records. President Trump has repeatedly claimed without evidence that the Fulton County records will reveal fraud. The Justice Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. For NPR News, I'm Christopher Alston in Atlanta.
California is bracing for thunderstorms, strong winds, and heavy mountain snow. The National Weather Service is urging people to take precautions in the coming days. Winter storm warnings are in place from southwest Oregon to the southern California border. State emergency officials are deploying rescue resources for flooding. The stock market was closed today in observance of President's Day, but NPR's Scott Horsley reports investors will be on the lookout for some key economic signals later this week.
We'll get fourth quarter GDP numbers on Friday, along with a report card on inflation from the Commerce Department, which is closely watched by the Federal Reserve. Walmart is set to report quarterly earnings on Thursday. The discount retailer has been thriving in a period when many shoppers are looking for ways to cut corners. This will be Walmart's first quarterly report since John Furner took over as CEO. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
It's the third day of the partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security as Democrats try to negotiate changes to immigration enforcement with the White House. But lawmakers are now on a 10-day break. You're listening to NPR News from Washington. In Sudan, the UN says more than 6,000 people were killed after a paramilitary group fought to capture a major city in Darfur. NPR's Emmanuel Akinwotu reports.
The UN Human Rights Office says the operation by the Rapid Support Forces to capture the city of Al-Fashir was shocking in its scale and brutality. At least 4,400 people were killed between the 25th and 27th of October alone, with evidence that a further 1,600 people were killed while trying to flee the city. One witness said he saw bodies thrown into the air after RSF fighters opened fire on a crowd of people sheltering at a university. The UN Human Rights Commissioner Volker Turk says the attacks amount to war crimes and calls for those responsible to be held account. The RSF and allied Arab militias have also been accused by the UN and US of a genocide against African ethnic groups. The war in Sudan has killed as many as 400,000 people, according to some estimates. Emmanuel Akinwotu, NPR News, Lagos.
A Ukrainian delegation is heading to Geneva for another round of U.S. brokered talks with Russian officials. Next week will be the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. There's little anticipation of significant progress on ending the war at the meeting. Both sides are sticking to their positions on key issues, despite the U.S. setting a June deadline to reach a settlement. And a search team has discovered the wreck of a luxury steamer that sank in Lake Michigan more than 150 years ago. The Lac La Belle left Milwaukee in October 1872. It was headed to Grand Haven, Michigan, when it began taking on water and sank. This is NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Jarl and Pamela Moe, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts. And the Public Welfare Foundation, committed to advancing transformative youth and criminal justice reforms.
From the New York Times, I'm Natalie Kitroeff. This is The Daily. Tech companies are racing to build thousands of massive data centers to power the AI revolution. And to find the land they need, they're barreling into rural communities across America. Their pitch is that data centers will bring good jobs, revenue, and a foothold in a rapidly changing economy. But not everyone's buying it. Today, my colleague Karen Wise tells the story of one county pushing back against big tech and what happens when AI comes to town. It's Monday, February 16th. Karen, I'm so happy to have you back on the show.
So happy to be here with you.
Okay, so just help us understand this data center boom. What does it actually look like?
So when ChatGPT first came out, initially a lot of the reporting was about chatbots, but very quickly this major theme started emerging every quarter when the companies would report their earnings. And what you started seeing is more and more money being spent building data centers all around the country and the globe. And what's happening is the data centers are getting bigger and there's more of them. And so the scale is just really hard to wrap your head around.
What do you mean by that? What are we talking about here?
Well, in the last year, just 4 companies, Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft, spent $400 billion on capital expenditures.
Whoa.
And most of that is data centers. And it's actually become this powerful economic force across the country. You have people moving all over the country to build these projects. You have kind of almost every industry you can imagine is getting pulled into this. You have speculators, you have developers, utilities, energy generators that come in together and push these projects in so many places because there is such a big demand for the computing power that lives in these buildings right now. And we're at this moment where despite all of this building and all the speed, there's actually not enough data centers available for the demand that people have. So the companies are racing to get them up as quickly as they can.
So tell me about that demand. Why is there so much money going into data centers?
So it's for artificial intelligence. And this is both to train artificial intelligence. These are the systems and models that underpin the technology that we use when you ask ChatGPT something, or there's a system behind the scenes at your company doing some process that someone used to do manually. And some of it is to use artificial intelligence because the way they power their ideas is by running a lot of calculations at once. And so you need bigger data centers, more powerful chips, much more power to cool those chips. And the largest AI data centers could use as much power as 1 million American homes.
Okay. Whoa.
In the data center world, what people talk about is not the square footage of a building like you might think about for a commercial building. They talk about the power demands because the power demands is what is most important and really symbolizes the true size of a project.
And that power demand requires a lot of resources, I have to assume.
Yes, so you have a bunch of different things happening here. You need a lot of buildings for the data centers themselves. You need the power lines and the substations to transmit the power to them. And we're also seeing this kind of boom in new generation of power because electricity use was relatively flat for quite a long time in this country, and now we're seeing this big growth in demand, primarily because of data centers. So now the tech companies are scouring the country for places to build. They want big lots of land with available power, with good transmission lines, good connectivity, and ideally a community that wants that. And now we have communities all over the place trying to figure out, is this what they want? If so, what do they want to get out of it? And do they have power to support it or stop it? And it's really led to this kind of ground up swell in so many places. It's hard to actually keep track of the number of places that are now having these debates in all these kind of wonky, small municipal spaces, in like county commission rooms and in utility commissions, because it drags up all of these questions about what do we want our valuable resources, our space, our power, our water, what do we want it to be used for?
Okay, I want to dig in on these fights. I want to understand like how they work at a really granular level. You have visited many of these sites, and I wonder if there's one that you would pick that would help us kind of get inside what this actually looks like, how it plays out.
Yeah, I would look at St. Joseph County, Indiana, and it had no data centers a couple years ago, essentially. And then in the past 2 or so years, you've seen tens of billions of dollars flow in there.
Wow.
And a community that went from not much response to kind of an overwhelming tide shifting against these projects. And so I really think it shows some of these dynamics that we're seeing repeated all over the country.
All right, what has happened there? It sounds like this development has happened really quickly.
Yes, so St. Joseph County, it's in the northern part of the state. South Bend is the big city, but the rest of the county is primarily agricultural, and the regional economy has been looking for new opportunities. It's kind of like the upper Midwest towns that saw a lot of work bottom out. Studebaker was based there, and they lost all those automotive jobs.
Right.
And the county has been working to attract industrial clients for a long time. Now, flash forward to May 2023, and the utility comes to the county economic development office with Amazon. And this is exactly what's happening around the country, is the utilities found themselves in this business of matching the customers, these tech companies, with the lands they know of in their territory that are available and would be well suited for this type of project.
And what do they see as the benefits of an Amazon coming to town in this way? Just sketch that out for me.
The Economic Development Office sees this as a great project. It is enormous. It's $11 billion at least. And from that, they see a source of tax revenue. They see it as a great jobs producer, particularly during construction, and just a way of using their land and resources to be part of this future economy that we all hear about, that this technology is the future. And it turns out that this was this flagship AI data center that Amazon was building for one of the leading AI labs called Anthropic. You may have heard of their chatbot called Claude.
Mm-hmm.
And they were building this data center to act as one giant computer for Anthropic to use to train its next generation of models, and eventually to be able to use it to start deploying AI services as well. And so for both sides, this became a really kind of valuable opportunity. They see it as a win-win. And there was not a huge debate locally. I believe only 2 people voted against it, the county council, because it just wasn't a big deal. People didn't know much about it. And so they got going and they built very quickly. I mean, within a year, they had, I believe it was like a dozen buildings up. And very quickly, you end up with thousands of workers on site every day. And that is both a good and a bad. You have a lot of money flowing through that. The hotels are full, and the occupancy tax for hotels is flowing back to the county. You have people locally getting jobs. The apprenticeships programs have grown. All of these benefits. But you also end up with a lot of downsides. There's legitimately terrible traffic around there. There's safety concerns about accidents. You know, there's just a lot of commotion that comes with a project this large. And people start wrapping their heads more around the power use and the water use, and those are very sensitive issues. And at the same time, other data center projects start popping up around the county and the region more broadly. And so Microsoft goes into contract on a site in another part of the county. And then there's other rumors constantly swirling. When we were there, oh, we heard this parcel might be a Meta project. There's Google doing something. There's just this constant crescendo of new projects popping up. And people are just unnerved by it, basically, particularly as they're living through this. And then there comes this new project last year, even bigger than the Amazon project, potentially, $13 billion. Wow. Over 1,000 acres. But with this one, there's a catch. They need a zoning change to be able to build this big data center. And that means that it needs to go before the community, before the county council to decide, will they approve this project or not? And that means these elected officials now need to listen to their community and decide, do they want more data centers or have they had enough, and are they going to draw a line?
We'll be right back.
The Daily is supported by Condor Airlines, offering nonstop service to Frankfurt, Germany from 8 U.S. gateways, with connections to European destinations like Venice, Barcelona, Budapest, and more. Learn more at condor.com. Condor Airlines, welcome aboard.
Listeners of The Daily, get to the heart of the stories shaping the world. For more on today's episode, go to nytimes.com/thedaily. Distribution of The Daily is made possible by American Public Media. APM produces and distributes programs that entertain and engage audiences everywhere.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston system, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu.
Support comes from Navasota Theater Alliance, presenting Harvey, featuring humor and heart as Elwood P. Dowd and his unseen companion bring gentle chaos to those around them. February 13th through March 1st. Tickets at navasotatheater.org.
Travel can open your mind and heart to new experiences, new people, and new ideas. Hey, I'm Rick Steves. Join me for an hour each week as we explore fun, affordable, and culturally expanding ways to experience the world. We'll meet authors, guides, and fellow travelers who can inform and inspire us to find our own adventures near and far from home. Join us for Travel with Rick Steves.
Travel with Rick Steves, Saturdays at 6 a.m. on News 88.7.
From the New York Times, I'm Natalie Kitroleff. This is The Daily. Today, my colleague Karen Wise tells the story of one county pushing back against big tech and what happens when AI comes to town. Karen, you just set up this big choice facing St. Joseph County, whether to greenlight this new data center, this new massive project, or say no. So how does that play out? What actually happens?
So this new project, it's not clear who's behind it. It's an anonymous LLC. There's only a handful of companies in the world that would use this much computing power, but no one knows who it is. And that anonymity really amplifies the anxiety over the project. And the project needs zoning approval from the county to continue. So the supporters of the data centers start mounting their own campaign, trying to say, yes, some people don't want it, but there's kind of like a silent majority that really wants this and wants the tax dollars that we desperately need. And eventually there's a hearing in December that's kind of the final yay or nay on this rezoning.
Regular meeting of the St. Joseph County Council for Tuesday, December the 9th, 2025 is now called to order.
And it becomes kind of the capsule for all of its arguments for and against it.
Creator God, we take a deep breath. We pray this evening for wisdom.
There is total overflow capacity. They have people signing on Zoom. They actually max out their Zoom capacity watching this.
Folks, I was saving this, but I'll say it now. It's going to be very, very important that we keep decorum tonight.
First up are representatives for the new project, and they come forth and try to make their case.
As this project does not require the amount of water that has been previously discussed.
They say they've addressed the water and energy concerns that the community has been raising.
You could not pick a more perfect location based on infrastructure and electrical infrastructure than this site.
And then comes the moment that people have sort of been waiting for.
We will open the public hearing on bill number 42-25.
Which is the public testimony, where people can voice their concern.
Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak in favor of the bill? Please sign in and state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
And they open it up to supporters of the project.
James Gardner, representative of the International Union of Operating Engineers and part of the State Building Trades.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Klein. I'm a business representative for IUOE Local 150.
I'm here to speak in favor of the rezoning on behalf of trades workers all over our county.
So the majority of the supporters of the project are either union workers or people who represent union workers. And they're saying,
the job site has helped me support my young family with steady work and great benefits.
This has been a huge boon to the people that live locally.
Take a drive around Indiana. Towns that have had a factory close or refused new development projects become ghost towns. Don't take it for granted.
And then there's another group of supporters, primarily business leaders and advocates, who are making a broader appeal. They're basically saying we should adapt and be part of this future. And these jobs are very good. They pay a lot of money. I mean, I've talked to electricians that make $200,000 a year, and people are moving there. If they don't live there already, the hotels are full, you have RV parks. But after about 25 minutes...
We'll move on then. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak in opposition to this bill? Please sign in, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
They turn to the opponents.
What I want to say is a family 68 years ago came here for the peacefulness, the quiet, the small town quality of life.
And that's where you start hours upon hours of testimony of people talking about why they don't want this project.
The public has a right to know upfront who is vying for our land and tax abatements.
Some people talk about more procedural concerns.
Our children deserve more than concrete and traffic. They deserve a place where they can freely run, ride bikes down quiet roads, and gaze at a sky full of stars.
And other people talk about kind of quality of life issues, of what it's like living through this construction. Other people talked about environmental concerns.
Data centers are significant contributors to local air pollution.
And you also heard concerns over the future of artificial intelligence.
I have done my research, and I know that technology is evolving, and in the next few years, the next generation of data centers won't need as much electricity or water or space.
What happens if these buildings aren't necessary anymore? And you also just saw a broader anxiety that this is a future that we're not sure we want.
Where stocks continue to rise while employment falls, allowing for the owners to get richer at the expense of the working class. This correlated precisely with the creation of ChatGPT.
And what is this all even for? Why are we racing to support this?
There's a reason they're coming here to build this, guys. It's because they think we're stupid. They think that no one cares about us. They think that we're desperate. And they think they're going to get away with it.
They don't trust the future that is being presented to them. And so after all this testimony, you get to the end. It's like 4 a.m.
Motion to deny.
They vote.
The denial motion is 7-2 denial.
And ultimately, they reject the project. They had decided enough.
Meaning, the council essentially has said, we're done with this. So this was, from the perspective of the community overall, a successful fight against this one data center in St. Joseph County. Are other places coming together in this way and having success from blocking these data centers?
Yes, I mean, this is happening. You see communities reject projects, but the amount of building is only going to grow in the coming years. You know, the companies all announced their investment plans for this year, and it is way more than last year. I mean, we're going to blow past $500 billion this year.
Wow.
And so the reality is the companies need this to happen, but you're starting to see more acknowledgement of these issues. So increasingly, you hear the tech companies talk about data centers more as AI factories. Everyone likes a factory in that it produces something useful in the economy. And that is, of course, why they are trying to pursue this opportunity, is they see it as a great opportunity that it can make companies and people more productive. It can, solve cancer and all of these things. And so they're trying to elevate this industrial building, basically, and say it contributes to this future. You also see more acknowledgments to what the community might want. Like Microsoft came out with a pact saying that they wouldn't ask for property tax breaks. They said that they would disclose water use in different locations. Amazon, in a different project in Indiana, made very substantial upfront financial commitments. I believe it was about $100 million to this one town that they're looking to put a new data center in. And they're also just activating politically. I mean, it came out in this hearing, people were saying they got text messages, they got door-to-door knockers, there were TV ads saying, come support these projects. They're making this sell that it is both an economic benefit locally, but also you're part of a good transformation that is happening, and you don't want to miss out. And the Trump administration has been very supportive of all this. They see it as a national security imperative. It's obviously been very important for maintaining economic growth. And they have done things like fast-track data centers on federal land. You've even seen some states start considering ways to claw back power from local governments over this and not wanting things to get held up by these zoning concerns or these mechanisms that people can use to resist them.
I wonder how much of this you feel, Karen, is about, the companies are pitching this as inevitable, get on the train, or the train's leaving the station without you. The Trump administration is fully behind it. And all of this is kind of just being imposed on you, and you don't have a say in it.
I think that's right. You do hear those anxieties over and over again. But I also think that we're seeing ways communities are recognizing their own power and that they do have leverage. I mean, the tech companies need these projects to happen. It is critical for them. And so it's a real problem for them if these keep getting shut down, because there's only so many places where you can go and build and do this. And so communities are realizing that they do have some leverage. People are learning their way that locally they can take control. And that is how things are structured in America. And there is local control over many of these issues, state control over many of these issues. And people are finding those pressure points.
Democracy in action.
There you go.
Well, Karen, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
The Daily is supported by Baird. Baird strives to attract and retain top financial professionals, providing stability and continuity of advice for clients across market environments. More information at BairdDifference.com. For everything you need to know about the most important stories of the day, you're listening to The Daily from the New York Times, distributed by American Public Media. APM produces and distributes programs that entertain and engage audiences everywhere.
The Daily is powered by the journalism of the New York Times and is distributed by APM, American Public Media. You can go deeper into the stories you hear on The Daily at nytimes.com/The Daily. That's it for The Daily. I'm Natalie Kitcherowat. See you tomorrow.
With so much going on, it can be hard to keep up with who's doing what and why. I'm Aisha Roscoe, host of Weekend Edition Sunday, letting you know whether it's news from across the country and the world, or a deep conversation about a novel, movie, or music. We got you. Grab your coffee or your earbuds and tune in to Weekend Edition from NPR News.
Weekend Edition, Saturdays and Sundays from 7 to 9 a.m. on News 88.7.
We are going to extreme lengths to get more protein these days. The powders, the shakes, the cottage cheese and the oatmeal, the peanut butter and everything. the chicken smoothie.
I went to the store, got like some chicken breast, boiled it, blended it in a blender. It was like, added a splash of water, and then it smelled like, I was just like, dude, I'm making soup here. This is so weird. So then I added like every berry, every frozen banana, like everything I could basically find in my freezer, and to make it a little bit more tolerable.
Have you tried the chicken smoothie?
And then my wife tried it too, and she was like, oh, yeah, you could definitely feel the chicken on that. And so I had this like, venti-sized chicken smoothie that I had to drink all myself because I can't waste anything in my house.
Coming up on Today Explained, protein madness. Rerouting.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Minnesota criminal investigators have again been denied access to evidence collected by federal authorities after the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy. Minnesota Public Radio's Brian Baxter reports state officials received a formal notice from the FBI.
The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension had been shut out from the outset, but the BCA continued to seek access to evidence. Superintendent Drew Evans says the FBI gave word last week that no materials would be turned over. Preddy, an ICU nurse, was killed by Border Patrol agents in Minneapolis on January 24th. At least 2 officers fired multiple shots. The BCA's Evans calls the lack of cooperation, quote, concerning and unprecedented. He says state authorities will continue their own investigation into the Preddy case, as well as the fatal shooting of a second citizen, Renee Macklin Good, earlier in January. For NPR News, I'm Brian Baxt in St. Paul.
It was a historic night in Olympic pairs figure skating, though not for the U.S. NPR's Rachel Treisman has more from Milan.
Japan's Riku Miura and Ryuji Kihara won gold, the country's first in an Olympic pairs event. They had been heavy favorites, but entered the night in 5th place. Silver went to Anastasia Metelkina and Luka Berulava of Georgia, marking the country's first ever Winter Olympics medal. A pair from Germany, Minerva Fabian Haza and Nikita Volodin, took home the bronze. The U.S. didn't bring home a pairs medal, though it was not expected to. Emily Chan and Spencer Howe and Ellie Kim and Danny O'Shea finished 7th and 9th, respectively. The final figure skating competition, the women's event, starts on Tuesday. Rachel Treisman, NPR News, Milan.
U.S. futures contracts are trading higher at this hour. Dow futures are up around 0.1%. You're listening to NPR News from Washington. A federal judge in Pennsylvania ordered a slavery exhibit at President George Washington's one-time presidential residence in Philadelphia be temporarily restored while the case works its way through the courts. It honors the 9 enslaved people Washington brought to Philadelphia. The city sued the Interior Department and the National Park Service over the removal. The action stemmed from the Trump administration's quest to get rid of any mention of negative aspects of the nation's past. People across Asia are preparing to celebrate the Lunar New Year tomorrow. In China, the holiday means a rush to get home, with hundreds of millions of people traveling by bus, air, and train. NPR's Emily Fang reports.
Transportation authorities said travelers made about 3.5 billion trips during this year's Chunyu, or spring migration. Many made by people leaving cities to see parents in the countryside or to reunite with their partners after months of working apart. Travelers posted videos of crowded train stations and airports, which have boosted the number of trips to accommodate the rush of people. This torrent of travelers in the 2-week run-up to the Lunar New Year has come to represent China's rapid urbanization and the hard work of people who work far from home. Emily Fang, NPR News.
Asian markets are trading in mixed territory. The Nikkei, the main market in Japan, is down about 0.5%. You're listening to NPR News.
Support comes from Base Power. As hurricane season approaches, Base Power offers energy plans to Texans with home backup for outages and fixed energy rates. Eligibility details at basepowercompany.com/NPR. Support comes from Bradshaw Carter Memorial and Funeral Services, dedicated to serving Houstonians one family at a time. All services are performed on-site, including cremation, located inside the Loop on West Alabama Street or at bradshawcarter.com.
Hi,
America Barris from Planet Money.
And I'm Guy Raz from How I Built This.
Between inflation and worker shortages, it's important to understand the economy right now.
That's right. And find out how entrepreneurs make it work for them.
Listen to Planet Money and How I Built This from NPR for an hour of economics
and innovation
every week.
Planet Money and How I Built This, Saturdays at 9 a.m. on News 88.7.
You're listening to Today Explained.
I'm Noelle King. Today's show is a rerun, and we are rerunning it because you and me and everyone we know is going to the gym lately, and so is writer Chris Giamatti. Chris publishes a health and wellness newsletter called Heavies, and last year he wrote a big piece for Grub Street about protein that started with his path to protein obsession.
This actually started a few years ago. Here in New York, once lockdown restrictions sort of eased up, the gyms were kind of the first thing to open. And so mostly out of boredom, I started going to my Muay Thai gym like 5 or 6 days a week and got really, really fit. Around that same time, I started listening to health podcasts like Huberman Lab.
When I heard this, I thought, there's no way this is true, which was making sure that you get 30 or so grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking.
Yep. And I was constantly getting all these messages that, like, you're not getting enough protein in your diet. And so that sort of triggered my fall down this trap door towards the protein event horizon.
People think it's crazy that I've eaten 200 grams of protein for almost 20 straight years, every single day.
The biggest lie that you're telling yourself is that you can't hit your protein goals. Stop overcomplicating it.
I blend chicken twice a day to be an open pro bodybuilder. Chug that baby down.
Somebody get this man some protein!
I myself do listen to Huberman, and I have gotten the message too. I think a lot more about protein than I ever thought I would think about protein.
Same here.
Me of 36 months ago would not recognize this person. Tell me where protein